And the World Changes. A novel, by Alan M. Kirk. 1. There is no sound in space. There can be no roaring sound from the massive engines that thrust the gigantic craft between the stars at a speed faster than light. There is no Doppler shifted wishing to indicate the passing of this saucer shape in the vacuum. No sound of sigh, or wail or scream. Silently, therefore, the discus-shaped craft, measuring several Earth kilometers in diameter, speeds with seemingly effortless urgency towards the galaxy spiral arm. Space bends around it. At the speed of light. For those on board, minutes last as long as the decades on the planet it is aimed towards. No screams can be heard. As the rushing craft's infinitely complex time-measuring device carries on recording its equivalent of seconds, minutes, hours on Earth, the slow evolution of the species continues inexorably. The southern ape, whose descendants will come to rule the world, finds rough, pudgy clumsy fingers can be bent around sticks and, with a flukish leap of nascent imagination that will alter the course of life on Earth, can use them as tools to destroy beehives to get to the sweet substance within. The craft's navigation circuitry has been set, centuries ago, to follow those who have gone ahead. For this is a pursuit. The great ship makes no sound as it shoots through silence, through a universe whose light and reality bend around its path. At light speed the universe is different. Reality's perceived laws no longer hold sway. The solid realities of time and space become unglued, of a shifting consistency. And on this hurtling ship, this absolute marvel of advanced design, something far removed from solid reality is unfolding. Inside the ship the realities of the crew have been altering. Some now see through eyes where no eyes should be, internal and external organs have been shifted as if in some gruesome joke, some no longer have mouths, or arms or legs, or have instead strange misshapen outgrowths of bone and flesh as their cells, genes. DNA have been altered and recombined beyond all possible reason. Some of the crew are dead. All of the rest wish for death. The ship speeds on. It speeds towards Earth. But as yet Earth's sun is not even a pin-prick of light in the sky visible from the great ship. Earth's sun is millions of light-years distant, warming a planet where technology still consists of crudely wielded sticks. 2. An hour after the sun had disappeared behind the still clearly outlined peak of Ben Vorlich. Mark and Carrie remained in pleasurable peace on the slowly spinning metal-framed roundabout. They lay back, each on a segment separated by a rail, their heads almost meeting in the middle of the turning playground device. Above them, in a shining July sky of softly deepening blue, they saw the stars, one by one at first and then in quickening succession, begin to sparkle into existence. The difference between stars and planets. How can you tell? Asked Carrie. Oh, everybody knows that. How, then, smartypants, stars twinkle and planets dawn. They just shine in a kind of steadily shining kind of way and leave my pants out of this, no problem. I assure you. Nothing was further from my mind. Carrie replied with a derisive sniff. Don T. Lie, a companionable silence stretched effortlessly for several moments. Neither felt any particular pressure to break the peace. At last, however, Carrie sighed happily and said, "Aaron T. Holiday's just totally great." "Aaron T. They just fine," Mark agreed. "School can be such a bore. That fourth year was such a waste of time. Oh, tell me about it." "Actually no, Don T. Tell me about it. I already know. Look, you can see all of Orion now, and the 3 stars in a kind of line are his pants," said Mark. Carrie reached a hand over and tweaked Mark's ear. "If you Don T. stop going on about pants I'll just have to, what, look a satellite, where?" "Oh yeah, how can you tell it's not a plane, though, it's a steady light and it's moving at a hell of a speed, could be a UFO." Mark almost regretted the idea as soon as he had uttered it. Or, then again, maybe not, no probably not. Not anymore. A memory now filled their minds and seemed to cast a chill over their evening. Murmured Carrie after a moment, and she lifted herself up onto an elbow to look at Mark's face. The spinning of the roundabout had almost stopped now, and there was a damp coolness in the air around the playpark that she only noticed with the change of position. "You still feeling freaked out about our visit to UFO Central?" Mark turned his head to Carrie. "UFO Central? Yeah, it sure is that. The whole thing's just weird. I don't understand what the hell is going on with that thing, but neither does anyone else. 5 years ago a spaceship, a real UFO, lands in a bloody cow field in central Scotland, and the world changes. The path of life on Earth changes. 3. 2013. It stands alone among years. The birth of Christ, 1066. 1492. 1776. 1945. These do not compare with the absolute certainty of Monday, July 1. 2013. Gilbert McIntyre, a dairy farmer struggling to make a living in the middle of Scotland's central belt, disappointed that the much-advertised Mayan prophecies had come to nothing and the world as he knew it continued stubbornly to exist much against his wishes, glanced away from the early morning rerun of The Dukes of Hazzard and crossed to peer out of his kitchen window this July morning to see a goddamn it as real as I am standing here genuine flying saucer get larger and larger and goddamn larger as it descended to land in his poorly drained lower pasture, obscuring his view of the nearby Ochil Hills and the unobtrusive grey slate-angled rooftops of the little town of Dollar. His was one of the first eye contacts to confirm what radar installations all over Europe were clamoring: something big was coming down, man. Just appeared on the screens out of nowhere. Get the general, tell the prime minister, alert the goddamn Pentagon. What humanity had been waiting for had finally happened. You could almost sense the world turning over, like someone long asleep about to wake up with a snort and a cry of what the hell's going on. Strangely enough, the first thing that flashed through Gilbert McIntyre's mind was not how this could be an unexpected fulfillment of the Mayan prophecies, nor how this could be the second coming of Christ, another event he'd often wished vehemently for in his luckless lifetime of disappointment. No, the first thing that flashed through Gilbert McIntyre's was a large euro sign. He was going to be rich. Goddamn rich. This spaceship, even now extending 3 mighty metallic legs to meet its discus-shaped shadow in his poorly drained pasture, was going to make him wealthy beyond his wildest dreams. He hugged himself in delight and watched as the cows in his field ambled nonchalantly out of the way of the massive ship's landing gear. 4. And so began a mystery. The people of the earth looked and listened to the media for answers. The journalists posed their questions to elected representatives. The politicians rephrased the questions for the military advisors, and the armed forces pointed virtually everything in their arsenals at the grid reference on the map now known as McIntyre's Field, a few miles southwest of Dollar, not far from Alloa. Falkirk and Stirling, in Scotland's central belt. Experts of every kind descended on the Alloa area. For a while everything ground to a halt as the entire range of emotions coursed through the people of the planet. The main feeling seemed to be euphoria, and suddenly experts appeared on everyone's television and radio saying similar things. At last it's clear, we are not alone in the universe. Yes, and that's kind of reassuring, don't you think? I could DNT agree more, but where does this stupendous event leave, you know? God, and may I point out we don't yet know who these aliens are or where they come from or what their intentions are, that's beside the point. What I want to know is, where does this leave mankind? Most of those terribly important things that had bothered people all of their lives, keeping a roof over the head, fixing the roof over the head. Putting food on the table, losing the weight the food put on, becoming richer, or more attractive, or fitter, or somehow better, the preoccupations of people for much of human history in fact. Now stopped being so important. The world's great religions, faced with incontrovertible evidence that mankind could not now be the lord of creation after all, as here we were apparently faced with a tangible physical not an invisible metaphysical superior, braced themselves for a massive falling off amongst the faithful, and in this, at least, they were not disappointed. For the world's religions had no real answer to this, neither Bible nor Quran offered any guidance for such an eventuality, and so, after 6 months or so, religious commentators reported on a marked worldwide diminution in religious fervor. But for all the questions posed, not a single one found answers from any source, religious or otherwise. Military, scientific and political leaders were alike in their ignorance. And like a teacher waiting silently, arms calmly folded, for an unruly class to settle down and stop making noise, the presumably alien spaceship simply sat in McIntyre's Field while the media and military turned cartwheels round about it. No sliding doors, no Klaatu, no Earthmen. We come in peace, no bumbling ETs looking about for a phone, no synthesizer music or incomprehensible signals, no communication of any sort. Silence. Finally the furore died down, as it had to. A fever pitch of excitement cannot be maintained indefinitely. People began to simply accept the presence of the strange silent craft as a fact. And resumed their generally humdrum lives, albeit oddly conscious of the fact that everything was now different, absolutely different. The bills still had to be paid. There were still TV to watch that did not mention the alien ship. There were still parties to go to and friends to meet. Were they watching us? Were they studying us, learning our ways and our languages? Were they testing our atmosphere for hazards before making contact? Were they the first of many? Was anybody alive on board? Were they a threat? All these questions began to recede after a while as people realized that the texture of our lives cannot indefinitely be avoided. 12 months passed and no communication of any kind came from the vast, brooding ship. Then, a year after landing, the Allied Military Command Center at Stirling Castle received the famous first signal, in English, from the ship. The Commander-in-Chief, General Talbot, released it to the world's media. The effect of the message rippling across the world was not so much like a trembling earthquake causing the needle on the seismograph to oscillate off the chart, but more like someone battering the seismograph itself to bits with a 5-kilo sledgehammer. We are the Soros. We have come from the other side of the galaxy. 5. Now, 5 years after the landing, the Soros craft, or, at least, sections of it had been opened up to the public. It came to be referred to as the Soros Museum. But the mystery continued, for no one had ever seen what a Soros actually looked like. Photos of them in spacesuits had been published, but that was all. For fear of contamination, it was said, they could not be photographed in their natural states. They were, moreover, a naturally timid and retiring species. But they seemed to understand PR. Arrangements were quickly made and staff hired so that the public, tourists, school parties could be encouraged to visit the museum and see the marvelous AV displays on offer there, wonderful exhibits of holograms of other solar systems. Planets and stars dying and being born. It promised no fantastic rides, but as a sightseer draw, it easily outgunned Disney. There were real, live aliens. In that flying saucer. Mark and Carrie had visited it for the first time 2 weeks before the end of term. The experience had not been a happy one for Mark. The roundabout stopped spinning. Carrie noticed that small clouds of midges had now emerged to perform their bizarrely repetitive evening ritual aerobatics. A moment's silence followed. Carrie stretched herself over the metal rail that separated them and kissed Mark passionately on the lips. When the kiss ended, Carrie's tone had a trace of anxiety in it as she asked, "Mark, are you all right? Lately you've seemed I don't know kinda strange, I know what you mean." Mark ran his left hand through his hair. She looked at him closely. She freely admitted to herself she liked what she thought of as his nice face. She did not think of it as handsome, but it was attractive in an imperfect, well-meaning kind of way. His eyes were a warm brown and shone with humor. His dark hair was always tousled because he ran his fingers through it all the time, and his smooth skin shone with the vigor of youth. It was just a nice face. Alicia Wotherspoon in the year above had fancied Mark for ages. Carrie knew Alicia was her neighbor and occasional confidant, but for some reason that Carrie herself could hardly explain, despite the fact that Alicia was absolutely and indisputably more attractive than Carrie, it had been Carrie that Mark had awkwardly at first showed an interest in. Mark had never had a girlfriend before. Not really. Kissing and fumbling after the occasional school dance or birthday bash at the local youth club didn't really qualify as having girlfriends, and while Carrie had been out with boys before, they had never sustained her interest for any length of time. They had been geeky to the nth degree, or too Neanderthal in their impulses. She noticed again the large brown birthmark showing above his t-shirt, She added ironically, "You've always been strange, but now you're stranger." Seriously, she looked down as if finding something of sudden curiosity in the structure of the roundabout. If you don't want to go out with me. I'll understand, good grief, it's nothing like that. Carrie, Mark, genuinely horrified at the suggestion, looped a hand behind her neck, gently pulled her close and dispelled the notion with a return kiss. A wide smile lit Carrie's face and she looked down to hide the pleasing rush of reassurance she had just felt. You know I don't like anyone as much as you. Carrie, said Mark. No, he continued reflectively. I just keep thinking about our visit to the Soros Museum. Damn, she thought, why don't you tell me that you love me? What is it with boys? Aloud, she said, her smooth brow wrinkling slightly with a concerned frown. I figured that was it. You really came over weird that day. Can you still do what you said? Actually hear the Soros talking? It sounds incredible. It was incredible. But no, I can't, not anymore. It was only in the museum that I could do that. And even then it was only for a moment and it wasn't very clear either. Maybe I imagined the whole thing. Yeah, maybe you imagined the whole thing. But that would make you a complete fruitcake and I don't think you are a complete fruitcake. You maybe the bottom half of a fruitcake, but you know how I get hunches about stuff. Well, they've been getting different, slightly stronger it seems. Like you know how McAllister tried that experiment in physics last week. I could kinda see what was going to happen before it did. Actually see it, you should have told him. He's still going around with that blue stuff on his face. Well, I figured he's the teacher, he ought to know. Slight mistake there, my friend, said Carrie, laughing lightly. Teachers, like parents, don't know everything. Only we like to think they do. Anyway, to be honest, I've not been feeling too good. Sorry if I am rotten company. No, that's all right. My parents, you remember them, don't you? Gin and Bitter, are having some friends round tonight, so that mean lots of wine and crackers, and so, you see, I've nothing better to do than hang about with you, like some depraved youth. She kissed him again, then remarked, not much to choose between crackers, you too cheeky for your own good. Well, what are you going to do about it? Mark kissed her again. At last Carrie sat up and put a hand around Mark's wrist to feel a pulse. You say you are not feeling well. So tell me your Simpsons, young man. She said. My Simpsons, ja, your Simpsons, if you please, or I will kill you via my German accent. She punched him on the shoulder. Well, I don't know. There's like a tightness at the back of my throat. It's sore, sound like a cold in the head. I have the cure, but I must look how you say clo air. Now you French, I am a doctor of many talents, you know, young man. Shut up, please. She drew close and kissed his neck lightly. Das ist besser, ja, ja. She kissed his throat. Und das grows besser all the time. No, well, I think there might be something wrong here, too. Mark said, feebly indicating his lips. Later, Mark walked her home. The driveway and the street outside her house were lined with expensive new hydrocars belonging to her parents' guests. As they said good night, Carrie said, Look, Mark, talk to your mum. She'll know what to do. She's a doctor. I am telling you what you already know. But promise me you'll talk to her. Promise. The sound of the front door opening interrupted them. Carrie, is that you, darling? Cried a woman's slurred voice. The silhouette framed in the doorway held a drink in one hand. Oh God, it's bitter, Carrie muttered to Mark under her breath. Yes, Mum. It's me, she called back. Who's that with you? This was accompanied by the sound of raucous laughter escaping from the brightly lit hallway behind her. The party's in full swing. I see, muttered Carrie, it's Mark, Mum. You remember Mark? Oh, a pause ensued during which Mrs. Jenkins swayed a little, leaned against the doorjamb for support and called. Well, don't be long. Upon which she turned back in and left the door to swing shut. Your mum doesn't like me much. Mused Mark ruefully. My mother doesn't like anybody much. Not me. Not Dad, not even herself. I would guess. And if we follow the usual pattern of party events this evening, they'll be all sweetness and light until the last guests pour themselves into their cars and then they'll launch into one another about who said what to whoever and blah blah blah. You don't want to hear about it. But back to the important thing. Promise me you'll tell your mother and get her help, okay? I promise, answered Mark, smiling. He kissed her. The kissing went on for a while, very comfortably. Eventually Carrie pushed Mark back with a laugh. That's a good boy. She kissed him one last time, a quick peck, pinched his cheek, touched his neck tenderly where the birthmark was, grinned and turned to go up her garden path. Mark smacked her backside before she could retreat too far towards her front door. He watched her pass inside into the brightly lit, noisy hallway. How, he wondered, could he really explain to Carrie exactly how much she meant to him? He loved her. Of that he had absolutely no doubt, and had almost blurted it to her on several occasions. He could not understand why had not yet told her how he felt. Bloody teenage angst, he muttered to himself. Does this ever wear off? As he walked home alone, however, his attention was turned again to how he felt physically, and as he neared his house he became increasingly certain that there was definitely something not quite right. He was experiencing a strange sensation in his head, in the place at the back of his mouth where the nasal passages appear to join the throat. The feeling produced the same dullness, the same sense of onset of illness that he supposed could mean the beginning of a head cold. He really would have to speak to his mother about it. He paused a moment before passing through his garden gate, his hand resting on the cool stone newel atop the low wall. The night was much darker now and, in this village removed from city glow, the stars formed a splendid spectacle overhead, from horizon to horizon. Nights as clear as this were rare. Mark took the time to drink in the breathtaking stellar panoply. A bright streak brightened over Ben Vorlich, then winked out. It lasted less than a second. A shooting star. Mark mused. Make a wish. He made a wish. Then it occurred to him, in a half-amused reflection, that he had, as far as he could recollect, never actually had a head cold. In fact, he'd never really been ill in his life. Sunday, the 1st of July. 2018. The first Sunday of his holidays, Mark lay in his single bed, hands clasped behind his head, considering what he knew about his dad. More and more lately Mark had found himself thinking about his father. In the outside world the sun was only just beginning to push aside the morning cloud cover. Someone was clattering about in a garage along the road, undoubtedly Mr. Jarvis initiating his Sunday morning gardening routine. A door banged opposite, setting wind chimes jangling. Dawn Greenwood across the road heading out to pound the pavement for her morning jog, still trying to lose the weight she had gained before the birth of her girl. Lucy. A dog away in the distance barked twice, then stopped, abruptly. Mark's father, John, had died in a car accident just before Mark's birth. His mother, Jeanette, heavily pregnant, had been a passenger, asleep, in the car at the time as they journeyed to Jeanette's parents' house near Alloway. The car, a Vauxhall Cavalier, well past its scrap-by date. A lonely Ayrshire road, a night of violent storm, a bend the wrong shape for the car's speed, and a beech tree 50 years in the growing, patiently waiting to embrace this moment for John Daniel's car to wrap itself around its grey, glistening bark. For an hour the rain continued to batter the roof of the smashed car before a passing farmer stopped his Land Rover to investigate the still gently smoldering wreck, check the casualties inside, find one still alive, and call the emergency services on his mobile phone. The impact hastened Mark's entry into the world. Jeanette delivered him in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. At the moment when his lungs inhaled their first breath to utter his first cry, 2 firemen were delicately cutting his father's body from around the steering column that held him impaled against the driver's seat. A subsequent accident inquiry found that, for some reason, the driver's airbag, which might have saved John Daniel's life, had failed to open. Mark had grown up without knowing a father's presence about the house. Later, at school, having listened to the stories some of his friends told about the behavior of their fathers, it seemed to Mark that the admirable qualities of fatherhood were uneven in distribution. Mark was not even sure where his father was buried, and that, just lately, had been something he had been feeling he ought to know. Mark and his mother lived in the little town of Touch, named after the nearby hills. Touch lay 4 miles west from Stirling and 32 miles from Glasgow. A new commuter town, built in the first years of the new century, the honey brick houses were all of reasonable proportions, most having ample gardens, double garages, distance between them. The residents were middle class, professionals, affluent, and there was distance between them too. There was no local pub. This was gin and tonic, cocktail cabinet land. The local comprehensive mirrored its middle-class catchment area clientele. Its pupils, mostly, worked hard, caused little trouble and absorbed their parents' values. Single-parent families were rare here. Mark Daniels was somewhat unique among his circle of friends and acquaintances. His mother, the single parent, was the local GP. Her surgery, a small but well-equipped building, had been specially built in the gardens of her house. Unlike most of her neighbors, who shuttled daily to Glasgow or Edinburgh for their jobs, Jeanette Daniels had only a 20-second walk to get to work in the morning. Mark was one of those nondescript sort of boys who compose the majority in nearly every class in every school. He did not stand out from the crowd, and seemed not to hang out with any one group in particular. But he was popular and could move with ease between the various factions of school society. He had played football substitute for the school team and was a member of the computer games club. He had gained his share of knocks and scrapes running around the local hills and woods, but could retire from the great outdoors to spend a happy hour reading a book or digging through his old stamp collection. His bookshelf held some school textbooks, a couple of volumes on computing largely unread, books on the net, trees and birds, and some fiction, the latest techno novels, the Harry Potter stories, and some very old Dean Koontz and Stephen King borrowed from his mother. Normal people in a normal environment. Perhaps they might have been 18 years ago, at the turn of the century, way back then, in a time before the terror attacks, the scientific advances, the new technologies, the collapse of certain economies. Yes, back then people could drive away in their petrol-driven cars to work in fluoro-lit offices in congested cities and spend their days happy in the thought that mankind's eminent scientists and politicians were busily thinking up ways out of the difficulties the 20th century had created. There was a kind of normality, as the quaintly sensational TV programs of the time could reveal. But nothing seemed quite so normal anymore. Not after 2013. Mark tried to focus on some kind of image of his dad, but none would come. He frowned and closed his eyes. Still none would come. He could not even remember his face from the old photographs he had sometimes held, the ones his mum kept in the albums under the cine cabinet. He tried to focus his thoughts and a dull ache started again at the back of his throat, the same ache he had felt the night before. He pushed the thin woolen blanket back and got out of bed. He would have to ask his mum, that was all there was to it. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Mark lay still on the softly padded examining couch, trying not to fiddle with the sensor wires stringing from his head. His mother was studying the magnetic imaging resonance results which should show whether or not there was any growth or obstruction at the back of his throat. The mini magnetic resonator, virtually a portable handheld device, had largely replaced X-ray machines and the need for hospital X-ray wards because of its practicability in ordinary GP surgeries. Jeanette's machine was transferring data from small sensors around Mark's head to the large and very sophisticated Dell computer terminal on the work desk. His mother frowned at the images. Deep in thought. "And it feels like a cold, you say?" Jeanette asked. "It feels like the start of a cold," replied Mark, "but actually I know this sounds daft, it also definitely feels like there's something way back there." In fact, Mark had never had a day's illness in all of his 15 years. His mother had never inquired too deeply into this. If it ain't broke, don't fix it was possibly her guiding principle in matters affecting her son. So when her son complained of feeling there was something at the back of his throat which shouldn't be there, she was going to listen to him. "Okay," she said. "It's done. You can take those things off and get up." Mark sat up, looked at his mother. "Well," he said at last. "Is there anything there?" He began to detach the sensors from his face and neck. One of them had covered the darker patch of his birthmark. Jeanette Daniels looked at Mark. He was more and more every day coming to resemble his father. The resemblance was uncanny, she sometimes thought. Like twins, or clones. Most bizarrely, Mark even had some of the same physical mannerisms John used to have, such as the habit of running his fingers through his hair when he was thinking. "What did you expect there to be?" she asked. "Answering a question with a question," remarked Mark. "All right. I thought there would be a growth of some kind, why, just a feeling." "You know, I see." Jeanette knew the worth of Mark's feelings. On numerous occasions, in a variety of circumstances, Mark's feelings had been correct. Like when he knew what was wrong with the car when it didn't start that time last December, or when he predicted that their neighbor across the street, Don Greenwood's child, would be a girl and they would name her Lucy, or when asterisk 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 Positioned in geostationary orbit 100 miles above the Atlantic, the Nordic IV communications satellite turned several degrees from its normal orientation. No one outside of the innermost defense circles in the US and the UK knew of the Nordic series of satellites or their prime purpose. Rumors of their existence circulated in defense journals, but officially inquiries about the Nordic program were greeted with stony silence. In the U.S. Defense Control Command in the heart of Cheyenne Mountain, the former home of the legendary NORAD, 2 terminals suddenly blanked out. "Goddamn," muttered Sam Webster, boss.